Hello everybody, John Sugar 12 back here again with another video, and today I bring you another top 5. Yes, today is that time of the week again, so why not give you another top 5? And today's top 5 is dedicated to the Dark Knight himself, Batman, the world's greatest detective. And as you all know, Batman's my favorite character, my favorite comic book character, and the Batman franchise is my favorite movie franchise of all time. And I just wanted to just dedicate an entire top 5 to my favorite movies of the Batman franchise. And seeing as how Batman v Superman is right around the corner, well, not technically, I mean, it's still a ways off, but it's a lot closer than it was last year, I thought, wouldn't it be a good idea just to periodically, throughout this year and the beginning of next year, to have top 5s dedicated to Batman and Superman, just to hype up the movie. So overall, that's what I'm pretty much going to do moderately throughout 2015. And the beginning of 2016 is to dedicate top 5s to those two characters. Nevertheless, let's get right into this top 5. This is my favorite, and I personally consider it to be the best Batman movies of the Batman franchise. And I will only be including specific Batman movies that have been adapted to live action and also have had a theatrical release. I'll not be including any of these Batman serials. I will not be including the TV shows, the cameos, the TV spots, none of that. Also, I will not be including any of the DC animated universe movies, like the animated series and the Justice League stuff, and all the various other animated stuff that we've seen with Batman. So this is only going to be solely towards the actual theatrical released Batman movies. With that being said, let's get right into this. And also, it's subjective. It's my personal thoughts. I know everyone has their own personal opinion and reasoning behind ranking the Batman movies to worst to best. But personally, this is my personal list. So in the comment section below, let me know what's your personal favorite / best Batman movies in your list. Anyways, coming up at number 5 has to go down to Batman Returns. Yes, Tim Burton's sequel to '89 Batman is definitely number 5 on my list. And I know a lot of people love this movie, and there's a huge fan base for this movie that fans actually consider to be superior to Batman '89. And even though I wouldn't go as to that far to say that Batman Returns is superior to '89, I do like this movie. It's definitely a very entertaining movie, and there has a lot of really crazy gothic stuff that goes along with this movie. I mean, you have Penguin doing a whole bunch of sex puns. You have Catwoman coming into the scene with her slinky little sexy outfit. You have all this various crazy nonsense. It's just a complete 180 gothic scene. I mean, this is definitely at the peak of Tim Burton's gothic his romance gothic scene where he was doing crazy shit like this, and Edward Scissorhands and Sleepy Hollow and all that other nonsense shit that he was doing at the time. This is definitely a movie at the peak of that nonsense. And even though there's a lot of things that I consider to be wrong with Batman Returns, it's still a very good, iconic movie. It's definitely nice. It's entertaining. It's badass. It's dark. And the number one thing I love about this movie is definitely the Batman-Catwoman scenario. As you all know, I'm a huge fan of Catwoman, and I love when they have the relationship between Batman and Catwoman's romantic relationship be the main focus of a plot line, whether it be an anime movie or an animated episode or a movie or a TV episode or whatever it be, or comic book, whatever it is. If it's a relationship, complex relationship plot device pointed towards Catwoman and Batman, I personally love it. It's definitely one of the definitive things I love about this movie. I mean, Michelle Pfeiffer is Catwoman in my personal opinion. Even though I'm not really big on the whole cat orgy that happens with the whole reviving her from the dead, and that whole cat orgy shit is really odd. And the whole ending of the movie where she's implied that she's allegedly dead, but then it's implied that she's still alive, and that this was going to be the new thing where it was going to be oh shit, Catwoman's going to be a supporting character in the Batman franchise. Yeah, that did not happen, ironically. I don't know if anybody remembered that, but go watch Batman Returns right now, watch the ending, and it really is a big what the fuck as to what the heck happened. I mean, wasn't Catwoman supposed to be the main stage of the new movies now? But what are you gonna do? It was so stuck in hell. I mean, you obviously had the whole Schumacher thing come in. Not to mention Michelle Pfeiffer was supposed to get a Catwoman movie deal that was in development hell, and obviously all of this really ended up being Halle Berry's Catwoman, which I'm sorry that I had to point that out, even in this top five that has nothing to do with Catwoman. But nevertheless, Batman Returns is definitely a good movie. It's not my favorite Batman movie, but it's definitely very entertaining. It's very awesome and dark and gothic, and I love the Batwoman Catwoman stuff with this movie. Anyways, moving on for that, going into number 4 on my list has to go to the Dark Knight Rises. Yes, definitely not the greatest movie of the Batman mythos, specifically the Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy. I know a lot of people consider it to be not really the greatest out of the Dark Knight trilogy, especially now. And looking back at it, there's definitely a lot of things going wrong with Dark Knight Rises. I mean, like, not to mention the stuff that actually happens in the movie, but there's definitely a lot of things that are really freaking weird with this movie. I mean, like, obviously, you know, you have Bane's voice. You know, everybody was complaining about Bane's voice. You had the whole really weird scenario with the scheduling problem. You had the competition at the time, you know, with the Spider-Man reboot, not to mention the Avengers. And on top of all of this, you had the whole Colorado tragedy that happened, which I'm sorry I even brought it up, but there was a whole bunch of things that were going wrong with Dark Knight Rises at the time of its release. But to tell you the truth, whenever I pop in my Blu-ray Dark Knight Rises at any time, it still holds up. It's still a very entertaining movie. Tom Hardy as Bane is awesome, and Hathaway as Catwoman is great, even though I think she could have done a lot more. I think Chris Nolan definitely kind of fucked up with Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, but it's definitely fucking awesome. It's really great. The visuals are amazing. The action is awesome. I definitely give a huge kudos to Chris Nolan for finally giving us a Batman movie that had humongous big fight/action sequences. I mean, like, no offense to the prior Batman movies, but come on, everyone has to sit down and actually agree to the fact that Batman in the prior movies wasn't really that great of a fighter, and all the action sequences don't really hold up. I mean, like, that's how I personally see them. Like, whenever I go back and watch all the prior Batman movies to Dark Knight Rises has the best action sequences and the best fighting sequences. I mean, I'm just saying the whole Bane the Bane versus Batman fight is so badass and so well done. It's so great, you know, and I'm not even getting started on the whole Batman versus Superman thing, which I hope is going to be an entirely new upgrade to that, which definitely will take the cake, hopefully, when that movie comes out. But nevertheless, Dark Knight Rises, definitely not the greatest in the Dark Knight trilogy, in Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, but I think a lot of people hate it a little too much. A lot of people don't really give it too much credit. And it still holds up. I really love it. I mean, like, when I go back and watch it, yes, there's things wrong with it. Yes, the ending is kind of weird. Yes, Bane's voice is hard to understand from time to time. But overall, it's visually amazing. The action and fighting is great. Batman's motives are great. I love the visuals. I love Anne Hathaway's Catwoman, Tom Hardy's Bane. I love Hans Zimmer's score. There's just a lot of things I like about Dark Knight Rises that I don't think a lot of people give too much credit. Nevertheless, and also, Batman's voice is a little too much. I mean, granted, Christian Bale's Batman voice will go down in history as, like, the funniest and most made fun of Batman voice in history, but to tell you the truth, I think it got worse in time. You know, like, in Batman Begins, it was alright. You can deal with it. It wasn't that noticeable. It was good. Dark Knight, when I look at Dark Knight, there's only realistically, there's only 2 major sequences where it bothers me. And Dark Knight Rises, it's, like, laughable. Like, it's kind of hard to justify it. I mean, I'm just saying, like, where is the trigger? That whole trigger thing, oh god. It's just laughable. Like, I just remember when I saw it in theaters, I was laughing because it's so funny that he did that. It's like, why'd you do that, Christian Bale? You're just killing yourself with this. But nevertheless, Dark Knight Rises is on number 4 on my list. Moving off of that, going into number 3 on my top 5 Batman movie list, has to go to Batman 89. Yes, I know, for a lot of people, Batman 89 would definitely be number 1 on their list, and a lot of people would consider this to be the definitive Batman movie of all time, and I definitely would go on that list too, but when I go back and watch Batman 89, there's just a lot of things that are really weird with that movie, and I think that has a lot to do with the fact that Tim Burton isn't a comic book guy, and he doesn't really understand Batman a whole lot. I mean, he understood Bruce Wayne and the craziness towards becoming a person like Batman, and he kind of got the whole darkness slash gothic style of it. But overall, I don't think he was really that into the Batman comic books, which I think had a huge factor in the movie where there's a lot of things that are really weird. But nevertheless, even with all the stupidity and absurdity with Batman 89, when I go back and watch it, it's still an iconic, badass movie. I mean, like, it's definitely the first blockbuster Batman slash DC comic book movie. I mean, like, it's definitely the movie that put not only comic books, but DC on the map of, like, you know, real good movies. I mean, like, Superman had the same effect, but not to the same effect that Batman 89 had. I mean, like, it just blew the doors down. It was like Jaws for comic book movies. It was just a humongous, mega blockbuster. You know, I mean, like, it was like Guardians of the Galaxy before there was Guardians of the fucking Galaxy, for you folks to understand. But nevertheless, 89 Batman, even though it's not number one on my list, it definitely has a lot of things that I love, and it's definitely the one of the three major things that got me into Batman slash comic books that I like to reference all the time, which is, of course, the animated series, Batman 89, and Batman Genesis, which was a comic book from the 90s, which is Batman from the 90s Batman. Those were the three major influences that opened the door to me with comic books slash Batman. And Batman 89 was the first Batman movie slash comic book movie that I ever saw, and it's fucking amazing. It's so awesome. Michael Keaton's Batman is probably everyone's definitive Batman, with the exception of Adam West and Kevin Conroy. And Jack Nicholson as the Joker, fuck, he takes the show. I mean, Jack Nicholson as Joker is awesome. The Batmobile is like the definitive Batmobile. I mean, hell, I wish I had that. Damn you, Jeff Dunham. But overall, Batman 89 is an iconic, badass movie, and it's definitely going to be hard to top for anybody who ever attempts Batman. But I'm still really big fans of just overall the Batman franchise, how it's evolved since that movie. But without Batman 89, you couldn't have anything we have today. But overall, it's number 3 on my list. Anyways, moving off of that, going into number 2 on my list, which would be a huge shocker for a lot of you, and that has to go to The Dark Knight. Now, I know a lot of people who know me personally and who have watched and stay tuned to everything of my YouTube channel since the conception of my YouTube channel would know that The Dark Knight, for the longest time, was my definitive number 1 favorite Batman movie slash comic book movie of all time. And even though to a certain extent it still is, when I go back and watch Dark Knight, I don't know, it's just not as great as I thought. And I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it's not really a Batman movie. When you go back and watch The Dark Knight, don't get me wrong, there's a lot of epic, badass Batman movies. It's definitely taking Batman to an epic standard that wasn't there before. It also, brought in a lot of realism that didn't have in the prior movies. Not to mention it rechanged and rebooted Batman's suit to actually make it, more realistically that he can move and fight with. And there's just a lot of really good Batman scenes. But overall, Batman as a character overall is overshadowed by Heath Ledger's performance as the Joker, which I consider the definitive Joker performance, with the exception of Mark Hamill as the Joker. But overall, Dark Knight is definitely one of my favorite Batman movies slash comic book movies, but over time, the only reason it gets on number 2 on my list is because it heavily focuses more on Heath Ledger's Joker than it does, Batman, which is a huge fall for the movie. Like, when I watch the movie, I want to be like, Batman is the main stage, but it's not. And that has a lot to do with the majority of the Batman franchise, which a lot of people like to argue, which is, the villains are more important than Batman. And Dark Knight is definitely the epitome of that, where, every time Heath Ledger's on scene, you love it, and whenever Heath Ledger's not on scene, you hate it. So it's kind of that, it has that problem with it that a lot of Batman movies have. But overall, when I go back and watch it, it still holds up. It's still a great movie. It definitely did a great job at bringing us a new, fresher version of not only Batman, but Joker and the new Gotham City that was established with Batman Begins. And, of course, it's just an epic, badass movie. It's definitely one of the best DC slash Warner Brother comic book movies that has come out ever since. It's probably like their last really great one, in my personal opinion. I'm pretty sure a lot of other people's personal opinions. But anyways, Moving off of that, let's get into some honorable mentions before I review my first pick. First off, Batman 60s, the movie, Adam West movie. The only reason it doesn't get on my list is that, for one, it's very absurd, it's very stupid and cheesy. The only reason I really don't really have it on my list is because, even though I really appreciate it and love the 60s Batman for what it was and what it was doing, it's just way too cheesy and campy. Like the TV show was one thing, but when you get the opportunity to do a movie with these people, why not amp it up? Why didn't you just amp it up? I mean, granted, it was at the same era of the peak of that show, but at the same time, you had such a great opportunity to just amp everything up to a whole new standard that they just really didn't do. It was kind of like just an it was just, the 60s Batman movie is just an amplified, longer version of an episode of Batman 60s TV series, which is why it's not really on my list. But overall, I appreciate it for what it is. Moving off of that, Batman Forever is also an honorable mention, even though it's not the greatest movie of the Batman franchise, and is definitely a really right turn with the Batman franchise, especially when it was exited by Batman Returns. I think it's still a great movie. I mean, like, it's entertaining, it's fun, it's kid friendly, it's all about toys. So, you know, and it definitely came out at the peak of my childhood, which is why I really like it. It's kind of like the Godzilla thing. It's like, I know it's stupid and cheesy, but I like it just because of that. So overall, that's how I feel about that. And moving off of that, that's pretty much it for honorable mentions. There's not really any other movie I want to mention. Batman and Robin, can't really even add it on the list. It's just, yeah, it just killed it. So anyways, besides that, number one on my list of top 5 Batman movies has to go to Batman Begins. Batman Begins is my definitive favorite Batman movie of all time. And the main reason as to why I say that is because I've been watching Batman Begins a lot. Like, for the last couple months, I've just been rewatching Batman Begins, and out of Chris Nolan's Dark Knight trilogy, it's definitely the best. I mean, like, it's the most comic book. It's definitely the definitive most comic book accurate Batman portrayal that's ever been done. I mean, like, with the exception of 89 Batman, it's definitely the best. I mean, like, you did Batman correctly. You brought him to the main stage, you had villains that didn't overshadow his performance, and the overall story and plot is used to tell the story of how Bruce Wayne becomes Batman and how Batman begins to operate as Batman in this version of Gotham City. And it's just amazing. I love it. The visuals are great. Christian Bale's Bat voice is not crazy. The Bat suit, I actually, for some reason, kind of like it more than the Dark Knight suit for some reason. And especially the symbol, and everything about it is just really great. I mean, it's just a very awesome, definitively iconic Batman movie, and it's definitely really hard to top. You know, I mean, like, when you go back and watch all the Batman movies, Batman Begins will definitely be the number one that holds up the most. Everything about it is just awesome, and it just feels like a comic book. You know, it just feels like Batman Year One, you know, with modern flavor in a realistic setting. That's how it kind of feels. It's just a badass movie overall. Batman Begins is, hands down, as of right now, my definitive number one favorite and / best Batman movie of all time. Of course, we can't really say that now because, you know, Batman v Superman is coming around and we have Ben Affleck as Batman. So until that comes out, maybe things will change, but, you know, that has yet to be seen. It's neither here or there, so that's not really the big point. But overall, that's my list of top 5 Batman movies in order of ranking of, best to greatest, if you will. Batman Returns, Dark Knight Rises, Batman 89, Dark Knight, and Batman Begins is definitely my top 5 Batman movies of all time. But in the comment section below, let me know what you personally think. What is your definitive top 5 Batman movies? Of course, only considering the live action and theatrical adaptations. I'll be doing more top 5 movies like this for the animated series and also the animated DC movies later on. But as of right now, what is your top 5 Batman movies? That's going to be it. I hope everyone has enjoyed. This has been my list of top 5 Batman movies. These are just my personal thoughts, folks. It's subjective, so let me know in the comment section below your personal top 5. But overall, that's mine. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. I hope everyone has enjoyed. This has been John 12.